All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us during the Lytham Partners Winter 2021 Investor Conference and what we are calling our 2022 Vision Event. My name is Robert Blum, Managing Partner of Lytham Partners, and during this fireside chat, we welcome MannKind, ticker symbol of MNKD on the Nasdaq, and their Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Michael Castagna. We will dive into questions in a moment, but just as a reminder, if you'd like to arrange a meeting with management, please send me an email. That's Blum, B-L-U-M, at lythampartners.com, or you can visit the website at lythampartners.com/virtual. Click on the one-on-one meeting request button, and we'll look to get you taken care of. So with that, let's begin. Mike, just high level, let's start things off for those that may not be familiar with the company, then we'll dive into more specifics. Provide a little overview of the company and maybe a little bit of your background as well.
Sure. My name is Mike Castagna. I'm the CEO of MannKind. I've been here for about 5 years now, going on 6. I can't believe it. And I'm a pharmacist by training. I've done a lot of turnarounds in the industry and have worked in lots of great therapeutic areas and different commercial medical aspects. MannKind is an inhaled platform company. We have one FDA-approved product called Afrezza, and we have a pipeline asset called Tyvaso DPI that was with the FDA. Will be back with the FDA very shortly. And that's for a rare disease called pulmonary arterial hypertension. And then we have a pipeline that's focused on orphan lung disease, which, unlikely, I say an unfortunate problem for society is COVID is going to cause a lot of lung diseases in the future. And I think we have one of the leading technologies to put drugs into the lung and really get good therapeutic effects with minimal side effects, hopefully, when you deliver it via this route. So we have a pipeline of assets plus an inline brain growing, and lots of opportunity for partnerships as we go forward on our platform. So that's a general review of the company at a 10,000-foot view.
Perfect. So we'll get into the pipeline and Afrezza here in a moment, but maybe starting off with Tyvaso DPI. What's the current status of the resubmission of the complete response letter?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we had a complete response letter unexpectedly, obviously, but the good news is it was a minor issue. It had nothing to do with the product. Or anything related to our manufacturing or the manufacturing of the overall ingredient. But there is some testing that had to move to another facility. That's in the process. This will be resubmitted very shortly by United Therapeutics. And then what we'll be waiting on next year is it a 2-month review with the FDA or 6 months? So we feel very confident the product will get approved at some point in 2022. Is it just an earlier or mid-2022 milestone? We'll find that out in the early in the new year.
Okay, let's talk about the market potential. Well, for PAH, as you talked about, PH-ILD, future indications of IPF and COPD. Kind of walk through the market potential here.
Yeah, I mean, when we started this journey, United Therapeutics marketed treprostinil for the last almost 20, 30 years, I guess 20 years since 1998, for pulmonary hypertension. And then April this year, they got ILD approved, interstitial lung disease, another rare orphan indication. But that indication should help them double their patient population over the next 12 to 18 months, as I think what they've communicated to Wall Street. So when we do get our approval from the FDA, hopefully in 22, we believe it will have both indications based on what we've seen already in our draft labeling. And then they have 2 other trials they're running, one for IPF and one for COPD. And so when you look at those two other indications, they're huge populations on top of the ones that United already has. So when we look at Tyvaso today, I think the analysts have this pegged at about a $1.5 billion asset over the next 3-4 years. And that's just with ILD and PAH. And so if you really get these other 2 indications, that's all upside. And what that means for MannKind shareholders is we will get double-digit royalties on those sales as they convert to our treprostinil DPI program. And we'll get some synergies on manufacturing, which helps out MannKind across the different products we make. And so there's opportunities here for shareholders, both on royalties plus manufacturing synergies and upside potential with other indications. So this looks like an asset that will continue to grow over the next decade plus. And we think it's the backbone of treatment for these rare diseases that they're treating. So we're a lot of excitement here for this current indication plus the new indications coming.
And maybe talk about the timeline for other products that are in collaboration with United.
Yeah, when we signed a deal with United, it was exclusive for pulmonary hypertension, so that we cannot deliver other products in PH. and they can't do other dry powders without us. So we're kind of married together. And so I think as UT, now that Tyvaso is well on its way, I think the question with UT is what else can we be doing to help change patients' lives in pulmonary hypertension? And I think that discussion will continue. We often talk and brainstorm ideas. Haven't announced anything obviously yet, but that's something that we continue to find of interest mutually. That we have a really good partnership. The teams work really well together, and our platform looks like it really delivers a unique benefit to these patients. So hopefully, as we keep talking, we'll find something else that we can put into the pipeline that will work to help each other's patient populations.
Okay. Let's transition to the pipeline there for a moment. What is the longer term objective with the pipeline? I think you mentioned earlier this year, launching one drug or indication each year, starting in 2025. Does the current pipeline support that capability?
Yeah, we've never been busier on the pipeline. I would say we're almost at capacity, meaning our team's ability to take on additional assets is really tough right now in terms of making product for the clinical trials and reformulating other people's assets on our platform. So we're at a point where we probably have to continue to expand and grow the capabilities and team in our R&D organization. But we're very excited about the pipeline assets we have today. One thing I'd say that's very unique to MannKind versus the general biotech investment community, you've seen several big failures in the last quarter here and pretty big impacts on those stock prices. Our pipeline currently, for most part, is full of assets that we know work on the indication that we're treating. We're changing the route of delivery to the lung versus an oral tablet in many cases, or maybe a nebulizer. And we know what the side effect profiles of those drugs, and we're probably going to help improve that side effect as well as the delivery for the patient directly to the lung if you're treating a lung disease. So we have I'll say a higher probability of success and a lower risk of failure when you're thinking about which company to invest in the pipelines and what milestones you're going to have. And so that's just something that's very different for MannKind. Only one of our assets is a true novel molecule we're looking at, and you'll ask me later about. But otherwise, the pipeline is robust. It could be clofazimine is the one we're looking at as the first potential to market. But some of that depends. Another product's going to move very quickly, and they're all going to start stacking up. So, it's going to be around what indication we go after for some of these molecules, and the speed of trial enrollment will be the second big limitation I look at of the future. When I talk to my colleagues, people are struggling with different clinical trial enrollment timelines, and that's something we can't predict under COVID right now. We're not at that stage. That's a big worry. But as we get to the end of 22, 23, those will be the kinds of questions we'll be able to answer a little bit better. How fast things can go.
Okay. Let's. You just mentioned it here a moment ago. Clofazimine. With the positive data, what are the next steps? Again, this is our 2022 sort of vision event. What are the next steps in 2022, including the DPI version?
Yeah. So the first one is getting the nebulized version in the clinic. That'll be going to patients. Likely we'll dose our first patient in the new year. The clinics are ready to go. Everything's been approved. And so that will happen hopefully as soon as we get into the new year when people are off holiday. It's not a long study. We're doing some bronchial lavage, which means you go in and you get some fluid out of the lung. That'll add a little bit of time to getting the results. But let's say roughly end of Q1, early Q2, we'll get results from that study. In parallel, we've made a dry powder formulation, and that's up on running that forward. And we'll probably have to make some decision over the next 12 to 18 months. Do you run with two formulations and bridge over? Do you just kind of switch over to the one? We're not at that stage yet, but we will get there after phase one there. And so that asset should wrap up, get to the FDA for our phase two focus next year, and could be in phase two late next year, early of 2023. 23. Where did a year go? I don't know. So clofazimine is looking good. With nebulizer DPI, we don't think it matters. We want to help patients. And I think either formulation will help patients a lot. And the data we have really shows that this is a strong contender to make a big difference in these two indications we're going after.
Okay. Sort of moving on here, what is the status of the preclinical development of TGF beta for IPF? And again, what should we be looking forward to seeing in 2022 here?
Yeah. This was a great asset. We brought in to do some formulation work back in June of this year. Since then, you saw Merck acquire Acceleron, which is working on this target in a different mechanism, different formulation. But they're looking at it for other stuff. And so we think this is a valid pathway to treat fibrosis disease. and we're very excited. We haven't yet put it into the models to show does it do what we think it does. That'll happen early next year. But what we have done is formulate it. We just dosed some rats. We're waiting for those results momentarily, and that'll tell us that we have a drug that gets decent levels, hopefully, in the lungs versus the plasma, because this particular class of drugs has a safety profile that causes systemic side effects that we're trying to avoid with an inhalation route, or in the case of our partner, a dermatology route. And we think that delivering this directly into the lungs will avoid some of the first pass metabolism in the liver and some of the systemic toxicities that come with TGF-beta targets. So that's exciting. I think in 2022, just keep an eye out of, we're going to try to progress this through phase 1 sometime towards the end of next year if we can get all the safety data and everything done. So that's exciting.
Okay, great. What's sort of happening with the RLS cannabinoid readout? I think which was going into phase 1.
Yeah, they're actually in clinic right now dosing patients in Australia. That's where we run these phase 1 trials these days. And I don't have any indication either way, other than that it's enrolling. Should wrap up very quickly. It's not a long trial. And the good news is I think they published some data this year showing that our technology on Technosphere gets really high levels of the cannabinoid molecule. And so that looked really good relative to an oral formulation. So I think RLS is on their way to kind of hopefully start to make some momentum, get some more recognition out there for using our technology in their platform and what they're doing.
All right, and I mean some of the other assets that are in the portfolio. Anything that sort of excites you the most?
No, I mean, I'm really excited about clofazimine. The levels we're getting into the body is really high, really wide safety margin. So that gets me pretty excited. TGF-beta, I think, can have lots of opportunities and shots on goal for indications, but it's a really early stage NCE, which is not something MannKind's typically done. But I think, as we go forward in the company, we become more successful, bringing in something novel and innovative, I think is how we're going to win and transform us even faster. And then we have a couple assets in the middle with DNase alpha. Another molecule's not been announced yet. Another molecule that has been announced. So we have a couple molecules that I think will become more public with next year. And again, those assets I am excited about. So I think we have a good 3 to 5 shots on goal just on our current pipeline on things that we're working on that have high probability of working to get into the lungs and hopefully treat these diseases that they're going after. And then there's some things that we've been working on different companies' formulations, and that could turn into some opportunities for 2022 in terms of platform deals beyond just MannKind pipeline products.
So I think you sort of just alluded to it there, but sort of if we wrap up this section on the pipeline, the key catalysts for folks to focus on are what? What are those key items?
RLS, I'll have a readout on the cannabinoid space sometime early next year. Clofazimine, I'll have a readout likely in Q2. We'll get stuff Q1, and then by the time it all gets summarized in safety, it'll be Q2. Another molecule that's on the pipeline will become more public in the year. Is that Q2, Q3 timeframe likely? We will have a dry powder version of clofazimine finalized, hopefully going forward. We have several FDA meetings on Afrezza that I think are, pediatric trials ongoing. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. We have some dosing stuff we're looking at to change our label, and we have a couple other things we're looking at for Afrezza. So I think just overall in the pipeline, the scientific drive, the company is really accelerating more and more as we go forward next year. So those are some of the pipeline assets, but also inline assets for Afrezza. There's some pipeline opportunity or indication opportunity there.
Let's go there to Afrezza now. And in terms of more of the commercial side of things, what are some of the changes on the commercial side that are being made, heading into 2022 to try to further the growth of the product?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're happy Afrezza's still in the market. We help lots of patients, but I think we could do a lot better, right? There are millions of scripts in a given month for people living with diabetes that we get nowhere near enough what we should deserve. So we're just locking up budgets and planning for 2022. And what I would say is we launched a few initiatives. We launched a primary care pilot this year with 25 reps to try to show in a certain area of the country, can we remove a lot of the headaches associated with Afrezza that we hear from endocrinology, and just go at their primary care pilot where we just make a very simple message on marketing, access, dosing, and trial and adoption. So that pilot's ongoing. That'll feed us into 2022 in terms of should we be scaling up primary care more or less. Nothing yet to talk about, but that's just a big pilot we're running. Then there's, I think overall from the messaging and positioning of the product, we think the ultra rapid acting category is going to continue to grow. It's about 100,000 scripts now in a given quarter. We think that's going to continue to grow as we've seen it grow this last year. And I think what our message is, if you're picking an ultra rapid acting insulin, we want to be the brand of choice. But more importantly, the biggest challenge in this country is still mealtime control. Despite spending, I just had a meeting with IQVIA yesterday. Our expenses as an industry on drugs are up like $5 billion a month. I mean, we're spending a tremendous amount in diabetes care, and our outcomes are no different. And that's really depressing, right? So we think and we believe that the last frontier in diabetes control continues to be mealtime control. That's what our product does, is it really does a great job at controlling mealtime insulin. And we want to elevate that message to say, the challenge is mealtime insulin, but not just that, the challenge is getting a faster insulin to cover your meal, and that's what Afrezza stands for. So I think you're going to see a lot more laser-focused opportunity on medical education, CME, and rep sales force execution. So those are the main focuses for Afrezza next year. And we're talking about a couple of different trial designs that I think are getting some attention as we talk to thought leaders around. Do we do a pump, a head-to-head small pilot study on pumps, and also show people can safely switch off insulin pumps, and probably look at showing that we do have one of the world's fastest insulins. So if you really care about mealtime control, we have the fastest drug to bring down your sugar. So how do we show that in a scientific publication? So a lot going on with Afrezza, but a lot of different things going in the next year we want to do differently than you've seen in the previous 5 years.
I want to, if we can, try to expand on one thing that you mentioned there, in terms of the expectations with the primary care pilot, the seeing is believing pilot, and the consignment model that you mentioned on the last earnings call. Any expectations that you can provide there?
I think let me break that down to 3 questions. So on the consignment model, we moved a chunk of our business from the wholesalers to the consignment model with one of the retail chains. We're not saying who it is, but long story short, it's a couple weeks in. I have only heard a minor disruption so far. We'll see as we get the data in. That'll be a Q4 event that we'll know once we wrap up the year in Q4. But so far, it seems like it's going fine, and it's critical to our primary care pilot because one of the things we're doing is lowering the price of Afrezza to $35. So anyone on Medicare can't complain. They're going to have access to Afrezza at $35. That's huge. Medicare is about 40% of the insulin market, and we think there's a real opportunity to help a lot of patients. So let's see how it goes. But that's one thing that the consignment model enables us to do at a lower cost, is bring the cost down for people living with diabetes. So that's great. The second question was around commercial changes on the primary care pilot itself. So that pilot, we're not looking to make a bunch of profits on it. I think we want to show, can Afrezza scale a lot faster than it has over the last 3-4 years? And there'll be a subset of the country. We'll be able to measure that and see coming into January next year, can we grow scripts a lot faster week over week than we have the previous year or two? That's got to be first and foremost. And then the second part of that will become, how do we make it profitable and do we scale it? So that's the primary care pilot. And then the third part you have here is seen as believing. Now that's another thing we're doing in our specialty sales force. And this is one, if your customers are familiar with a product called Dexcom or Libre, but people stick their finger, they squeeze out a blood drop, they see what they're doing. Well, now what you do is you put a little sensor on your arm, you scan it, it tells you exactly where your sugars are. And what we're trying to do is get people to try Afrezza and scan to show, we'll give away a free CGM just to show you that Afrezza works way better than what they're doing. And so that's the Seeing is Believing campaign. And again, that's about 3-4 weeks in. And so far, the initial feedback's been very positive on that one.
Excellent. Yeah, going back to the pediatric trial for just a minute. Again, remind us sort of how that's progressing, and how a successful trial results could have a positive impact on the adoption and growth.
Yeah, I think the one thing I always say is, Afrezza should have helped a lot more people than it has to date. But I think when you take a step back and ask yourself how diabetes innovation drives change, pediatrics is a big part of that. You can go back to Omnipod and their success in podders and in kids. You can go back to Dexcom in kids. You can go back to insulin pumps in kids. And even we were talking yesterday, Humalog had like 100% conversion in a year. from Humulin in kids because it was such a difference for them. So I think getting the pediatric trial right in kids is going to help propel long-term perpetual growth of Afrezza, because assuming we do really well, which we expect to do really well, I'll talk about that. That those kids will grow up into adults. They'll train adult endos how to use inhaled insulin. There'll be a natural extension of our brand, and our brand strategy is getting a zealot of constituents who are happy and doing great to teach doctors how to adopt this more widely. And I think as those kids grow, that'll naturally happen. So we think kids and parents drive innovation and adoption in diabetes. We think it's really important to get this innovation into their hands so they can first see it firsthand. That's number one. The part of that will be Blue Hail, which is something we met with the FDA on recently, and really looking to get that in the patient's hands sometime late 22, early 23, depending on the chip shortage. But how do we get Blue Hail in a consumer edition that people can see? Again, back to seeing is believing. I do a scan, I see where my sugars are, I take Afrezza, an hour later I see I'm low, not low literally, but lower than I was in high sugar. And so that's super exciting. And the pediatric trial, we have about 10 of the 20 targeted sites up and running. And hopefully they'll start enrolling patients more as we get into the new year. Kind of hard to enroll people between Thanksgiving and Christmas with the holidays and the screening criteria and things that people have to go through. But so I wouldn't expect a lot in Q4, but as we get into Q1 next year, I do expect the peach trial to pick up.
Yeah. Are you expecting in the FDA's mid-pilot program, could that lead to an update of the label and create a better new patient start experience with Afrezza?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question as well. So MIDD is the pilot, and we were accepted as a dosing. It's mainly looked at dosing products. So it could result in a label change potentially. The FDA is trying to use more real-world evidence and modeling data to kind of update labels or put better information on labels. And let's see if they're really serious about that. And I think we've done a phenomenal job on the modeling. I really love seeing what I see. It really shows you how Afrezza is different than rapid-acting insulin, as well as the old dosing that we had. So one of the things we're dealing with is the label has the incorrect dosing when you're converting from injectable insulin to inhaled. And so we're trying to get that updated through this pilot program to show that you can safely give a 2x round down, meaning if you're on 2 injectable units, you would go to 4-unit cartridge. If you were on 5 injectable units, you would go to an 8-unit cartridge. So we're basically saying multiply by 2 and round down, make it much easier for a customer to convert from injectable to inhaled. That's the number one opportunity for the MIDD program, is to show that. The second part of that is to show our current conversion underdoses patients and causes breakthrough sugars. And we really want to show that a proper conversion provides a better patient experience, better retention, and better outcomes. And so that's a small study we did in 20 patients that looked really good. That'll get published very shortly. But I think the MIDD program should take the collection of the real-world data we just did, plus the modeling data, put those two together and say the label needs to be updated in the benefit of patients. So see where the FDA is.
We're sort of closing in at the end here, and you've talked about these and some terms throughout, but what are the key milestones that investors should be sort of walking away from as you're looking into 2022? And if you and I were to sit down here 12 months from now, what are some of the biggest risks to achieving those goals?
I think none of us can underestimate or overestimate the impact of COVID, either on employee retention, employee mental health, clinical trial enrollment, field rep access. There's so many things that we just can't predict in today's world that my personal opinion is COVID's here to stay for the foreseeable future. And we just got to get back to running companies and leading people and getting people to be successful in their jobs. So I think that's our mentality here at MannKind, and I hope our employees follow through with that and pull through in a good way. But we do see definitely a lot of challenges in people's mental health right now, and I think that's important to keep in mind. So I think as we get to the end of 22, I hope we have a positive outread of clofazimine, that we're talking about going into phase 2. We're starting phase 2. We announced 1 or 2 other products going into phase 1. Maybe we'll have some results if we're lucky, or at least getting rolling so that next year in 23 we have results. I hope we see a Tyvaso approval in the early part of next year, whether that's the 2-month review or the 6-month. But I think getting Tyvaso in the patient's hands will be really, really important. And talking about how that's launching, how great that's doing, and how we can help drive that even faster in 2023. That would be another big milestone. And then finally, did Afrezza break an inflection point, right? How's pediatrics enrolling? Do we have any early insights out of the data? I think those will be things. But the bottom line is, honestly, there are so many great things happening in MannKind, whether it's the pipeline, it's Tyvaso's indications, or Afrezza and the peds, and all the investments we're making there. So it's just a great time to be a shareholder, great time to be an employee. It's a great time to be a key stakeholder here. It's not where the company was 3-4 years ago or even a year ago. So we feel very privileged to be where we are. And it's through a lot of hard work of a lot of our employees and the support of our investors and our investor community. So thank you everyone out there for all your support.
Fantastic. We've kind of hit on quite a bit here. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to share?
I don't let grass grow under my feet, so we're going to keep transforming the company.
Sounds good.
All right.
We'll go there. All right, Mike. Well, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate it. Again, I'll remind anyone that is listening here today, if you'd like to arrange a one-on-one meeting, send me an email, Blum, B-L-U-M, @lythampartners.com, or again, visit the website, click on the one-on-one meeting request button, and we'll get you taken care of there. So we hope you all enjoy the conference. Mike, thank you very much for your time again.
Thank you, Robert, for having us and inviting us today. Appreciate it.